The hotel was the kind of place people forgot the second they left it. 3 stories, 40 rooms, a lobby with 2 sagging couches and a vending machine that never quite gave you the chips you paid for. I worked the night shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I took the job because the silence was manageable. You could get through 8 hours of paperwork and the occasional late check-in and still feel like you hadn't wasted your whole life. Most nights it was all hums and small noises, the refrigerator's low groan, the heater clicking, cars passing in the distance. That night he showed up around 11. He buzzed the door like everyone else and walked straight to the desk, baseball cap pulled low, backpack slung over one shoulder. Mid-40s, tall, not gaunt but not comforting either. He asked for a room. I swiped his card and the machine beeped and I gave him a key for 214 on the 2nd floor. He watched me hand it over the way people watch explosions on the news, fascinated, distant, as if he was learning a pattern. His eyes held on me for maybe 4 seconds after the keys left my palm, and I felt the space behind me get colder. He took the elevator. I sat back and told myself not to make a thing of it. Most guests are tired and blank. Most people stare because they're tired of traveling. Around midnight, though, he was back in the lobby. Not at the desk, not with luggage, not on his phone. He sat on the couch and stared at the TV with the remote in his lap like there might be a picture in the static. He didn't sleep, he didn't scroll, he simply sat and looked. At first it was small, the kind of thing you can shrug off. A man can't sleep, a man watches the TV. But after 20 minutes he hadn't moved. After 30 he hadn't blinked much. When I crossed the lobby to the vending machine to get water, I felt him follow me with his eyes, not glancing, not looking away, like a pressure. I kept my head down the whole walk back. I went back to the computer around 1 a.m., and something on the screen didn't match my memory. The occupied room list showed 214 as vacant. I pulled up the transaction log, no charge, no name in the check-in records. The key entry log, the one that tells you exactly when a door opens, said nothing for 214. My stomach folded into new shapes. I called the room, 10 rings, nothing. I checked the cameras. The first floor camera showed him walking the hall, pausing at the end, standing in the stairwell for 10 minutes like he was listening to a thing only he could hear. Later he drifted to the corner behind the vending machine, where the light from the lobby didn't reach. He was always watching something that wasn't there. I told myself it was a system glitch. I told myself I'd made a mistake. The machine had beeped. I had the key in my hand. The human brain will do anything to make an explanation that keeps us calm. The ledger refused to cooperate. The ledger was a cold, indifferent witness. At 1:30 I walked out into the lobby and asked if he was okay. He turned toward me and looked like a man who'd seen a long, slow train die, blank, patient. "Can't sleep," he said. He turned his head back toward the dark TV. He said the 3 words like an explanation, and they sounded like a promise. By 2 a.m., he had changed positions without leaving the building. He stood at the end of the hallway, rimmed by shadow, and just waited. Then he drifted back and sat down like nothing had happened. I called my manager at home. She told me to keep eyes on him and call the police if he did anything threatening. Her voice was flat and there was that love people have for routine escalation. Do what you can, and if it gets weird, escalate it higher. I watched him move on camera. He would appear at the elevator, then at the stairwell, then by the vending machine. Once, he stood outside a guest's door on the 1st floor and didn't knock. He simply lingered, as if the door itself had something to tell him. When I saw that, the room filled with a pressure I couldn't name. A person in a building is one thing. A person on the threshold of other people's doors is another. At 3:15 I called the non-emergency line and explained the situation. They said they'd send someone. I stayed glued to the monitors like someone reading the last page of a book they can't stop. He watched me from 15 feet away. He didn't blink much. He watched me as if I were a thing under glass. A guest buzzed in at 3:50. I let them through and the man's eyes tracked the guest like he was studying how people carry themselves when they're not being observed. He followed the way the guest moved across the lobby like he was mapping exits. When the guest left, the man went back to the couch. Then he stood at a door and for 3 minutes he stayed so still it could have been a statue. That was when I called 911. I told them a man was outside a guest room. Officers were on the way. I watched the camera feed as he paced slowly back to the lobby and then came up to the desk and leaned over it like he belonged to the building. "Got any food?" he asked, voice low and even. There are small things in the dark that spiral you toward panic. The way a voice doesn't echo the way you expect. the way the light catches a face and the face keeps a secret. He gave a small smile and walked away when I told him there were vending machines. I was counting minutes and breathing like a swimmer doing laps. The officers arrived at 4:10. Two uniforms walked in and approached him. He answered questions calmly. I couldn't hear everything. The camera feed's audio is thin, but the cop who came back later told me the man had no reservation, no ID, and that the credit card he'd handed me was stolen. He'd been pretending to be a guest to get inside. They charged him with trespassing in the stolen card and walked him out. After they left, I sat behind the desk and shook until my shift ended. But the cameras stayed on all night in my head. I expected him to reappear because in that small building he had been everywhere he had no right to be. There are other nights you don't forget either. At a gas station a year ago, a different man began to show up late. He learned my name somehow, Meredith, and said it like a person who had practiced saying it in the dark. He would comment about small things, like how I dotted my I's with slashes instead of circles, or that I checked the backroom door at 2 a.m. on the dot. He left a Polaroid on the counter once. A picture of me from outside, taken close enough that the flash should have shown the camera. I found it on my break counter and my jaw went hollow. When I told him to leave, he nodded like a lesson had been given and complied, and the police came and arrested him. They searched his car and found notebooks full of my schedule, notes on my walks, my shopping, pages with my name written until the ink turned into a black hole. He said he was just curious. A judge issued a restraining order. I stopped working nights and moved towns. But curiosity is a long, hungry thing. Years later, headlights behind me on the freeway still make my palms sweat. And then there's the motel with the bell. I used to joke I would wake up to a bell ringing and mutually agree it was the building testing my nerves. One night the lobby bell dinged at 2 in the morning. I looked up, walked to the doors, empty. I went back to the couch. The bell dinged again, empty, then again. I sat right behind the desk and watched the bell like it was a bomb. 15 minutes, nothing. Then a pale hand came from under the counter and pressed the bell like a joke with a punchline I wasn't supposed to laugh at. I ran to the back and locked the door. Monitors showed someone crawling out from under the desk, tall, hood up, the shape of someone who'd folded themselves into a space made for nothing. He crawled to the exit and checked the lot, then wandered off-screen into the hallway toward the back office. The dispatcher told me to stay put. I told her I could feel him in the building with me. I saw him pace the lobby, and once, stand at the front doors staring out into the road like he was waiting for traffic that would never come. I watched the police lights slice the parking lot and my chest stuttered relief, but the man slipped out before they could clear him. When the officers found a rock big enough to prop the front door open, they told me he must have pried it ajar and crawled beneath the desk to hide. They never found him. He had melted into the night the way bad dreams melt if you shake your head hard enough. What all these nights have in common is how ordinary they are until they are not. Small habits, checking the back room at 2, sweeping the same patch of carpet, nodding to a regular, become the roadmap a stranger uses. The things you do to feel safe become the things someone else uses to make you unsafe. I want to know what his plan was. Maybe he had none, maybe he meant to do something and then decided not to, for reasons only he could explain, or maybe he was scouting, learning the lay of the place in a way that made him feel in control. The worst part is the not knowing, that he sat for hours, drifting the building like an animal in winter, watching room doors and mapping the way people moved in the dark. He had no right to be there. He had no right to have watched me, to have known when I checked the back room, to have learned the names on the list. For those hours, the building belonged to him in a way I couldn't stop.